I want to go back to Tuesday. Let's rewind and go to Sox Mom's question from our Mailbag Monday episode that, again, we did on Tuesday, where she said, if you were Chris Getz, what would be your number one offseason priority? And I got laughed out of the building when I said Adam Duvall. So, okay.
I don't know, laughed at the building.
I was just kidding. But both of you said pitching in some sense or the other.
Starting
pitching. Yeah. So, I just don't get it. Like, again, we kind of got into it a little bit just because why now? Why would the White Sox, out of all these years, go spend money on pitching? Why would they go?
We didn't say the question wasn't what do you think they will do.
Yeah.
It's if you were Chris Getz, what would be your top priority?
Well, what do you think they will do? Do you think?
What do I think they will do?
Yeah.
They certainly don't have any starting pitchers, so going to get some of those certainly makes sense.
I mean, I think, that would be, if I was looking at their roster and if I was them, knowing how well Minnesota's gone via their pitching, I would say, hey, we need to stack up to them and that pitching staff, and one of the people we could take is one of their people in Sonny Gray. So I would be like, yeah, we already have a need for pitching, and we see one of our people who are currently in our division excelling in the playoffs because of their pitching, their starting pitchers. I mean, we talked about it in the preseason about Lopez, and talk about laughed at. I was laughed at about Lopez, about Jorge Lopez being better than Lance Lynn. I get the last laugh. That man is a Cy Young, probably a
Pablo Lopez.
Javi Lopez. He's probably the third guy in the Cy Young voting right now for the AL. So I say, hey, which one?
His name's Jose, isn't it?
It's Pablo
Pablo?
Lopez.
Pablo.
Why did you say
Jorge.
Javi Lopez?
I said Pablo.
Oh.
I thought you said Javi.
Okay, well,
Javi Lopez was a catcher.
Both of you said Javi, so apparently I said Javi, but I meant Pablo Lopez.
Yes. But he's the top 3 Cy Young guy right now.
But you said Jorge Lopez, who was a former Twins pitcher.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so we all were just saying different.
You know me in names.
There's a lot of Lopez's.
Mercy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. And it's a good point because, again, Jordan Schusterman of Fox Sports just recently wrote about the Twins strikeout rate. And, again, we look back to 2022, and the White Sox were near the top of baseball. And same with 2021 in strikeout rate from their starters. So we do see where the White Sox have had past success with their starters. And a thought that I've had with Brian Bannister is he's coming from a very friendly pitcher's park. I mean, you look at what he was doing in San Francisco, and what he told you guys was, we started shifting towards sinker ballers. And the reasoning he gave was because a lot of fastballs were being thrown up in the zone. Hitters started to tailor their swing. But also when you have that giant wall out in right field in AT&T Park, which I think is now Oracle Park, it also helps to, throw sinker balls low in the zone because it's tough to elevate those balls regardless of where you're at. And it's just tougher to hit those balls out and get enough elevation on balls low in the zone and inside, especially over that wall. So, I mean, he also kind of tailored that design with that team. And I think that culminated perfectly in 2022 when they won 107 games.
Sure. His main point, though, was talking about, and you'll remember the great cake baking line, right? It was that you got to work with what you got. And so the point that he made was, hey, when I was in Boston, we had a lot of guys that threw the ball really, really hard. So that's the kind of pitching staff that we had. We tried to amp up that aspect of it because those guys were good at it and they could use it to get opposing hitters out. Once he got to San Francisco, it was a different skill set that was more prevalent in that organization with the pitchers that they had, getting guys to induce ground balls, that kind of thing. Yeah, you're right. All that stuff comes together in, what are the trends of the hitters? We talk about the chess game all the time, right? What is the way that the pitchers can go after guys that they're not expecting? You talk about playing to the park. Absolutely, you should do that, right? If you've got a pitcher-friendly park, take advantage of it. But at the same time, it's about what he's going to show up to the White Sox and see, and probably we're talking about guys at all levels, right? Be it Dylan Cease and Michael Kopech at the major league level, or guys throughout the minor leagues who they either just acquired or have acquired in recent years. It's about taking a look at those skill sets and saying, okay, what can we establish as a philosophy for our organization based on what they're going to be able to execute. You don't walk in and say, all right, everyone, you are doing what I say, whether you can do it or not. You have to say, all right, let's take a look. Let's do the deep dive like you were talking about and figure out what the best path forward is based on the tools that they have at their disposal.
And going off of what you just said, and I've been thinking since Brian Bannister, about, and the organization talking about he'll be kind of part of acquisitions and such. Do you think that he will shape the type of pitchers that he wants out there in the free agent market and say, hey, I want player X because he does this, that, and the other, and that's the stuff that I excel at, and I think we get him. He's a 4 ERA guy. We can get him into the mid-threes.
And that's why I love you, Herb, because you're giving me a perfect transition. Hey, Brian Bannister, and Sarah, this is where we're going to play the first clip. It's not the dugout clips. It's the podcast clip. Hey, Brian Bannister, what are you going to look for? What do you look for when you're looking for pitching projects to develop?
You've seen I'm sure tape of some of the guys that are Michael.
One of the things that I've leveraged throughout my coaching career is going, now that we have data, we have literally timestamps of movement quality and pitch quality throughout a player's career. And it's kind of like, being a paleontologist, like you're going back in time, you're looking at what they did then, and then you're like, let's do that again. I've been able to do that successfully with a lot of players. And so many players are always chasing like the next big thing versus, hey, you were actually pretty good at this point in your career. If you just went back to that, you might make $20 million next year. And there's a lot to be said for making $20 million. And so I love, one of my sweet spots is kind of that 29 to 35 demographic of big leaguers who at one point were really, really good and really, really locked in. And whether it's they thought there was a better version of themselves, a higher ceiling version, a coach or org sold them on going a different way, whatever the reason that they changed and they kind of got out of what they did well, and big league hitters were telling them that it was a productive way to pitch. That's all I need to see. And getting really good at recreating what they did in the past is one of my favorite things. And it's something I've been able to exploit for years. And it's fun because I don't have to teach them something new. Their body already knows those patterns, knows those motor preferences. I don't have to fight them or retrain them or build up that proprioception. It's already there. And once they actually start moving that way again, they actually start to love the game again, because they remember they had success at some point in the past doing that. And if you just tell them like, that's good enough, like being a 3-WAR pitcher in the big leagues is good enough. Like we're not all, a 7 to 9 WAR guy. And right now you're not making much money. The reason you're here is because, you're looking for more upside, but you had the upside. Let's just get back to it. And that's one of my favorite ways, just to talk to pitchers and go, that's good enough. And they find just a lot of peace in that concept.
Again, you brought up the cake analogy that he said, and that is a great podcast. It's about an hour and 45 minutes long, from Tread Athletics, at Tread Athletics, TREAD Athletics. Ben Brewster and Tyler Zombo were the two other players on the other side of the couch. That was Brian Bannister talking about his sweet spot being 29 to 35-year-old pitchers who have had past success and trying to get them back to that past success, and trying to figure out what works for them, and if they got away from what works, trying to get them back. And I don't think it's about, because you said you have to go out and set the market, and you were like, oh, Adam Duvall would be so disappointing because, again, you're paying, you could pay for Adam Duvall at the end of free agency. Adam Duvall might not be there, though. But I'm really defensive of Adam Duvall. But I don't think you're going to see the White Sox go out and sign Blake Snell. I don't like Jerry Reinsdorf has never been one to pay for pitching. The only one that we've seen the White Sox get close with is the Zach Wheeler contract, which would have been over $100 million. But again, it's not anything like Garrett Cole or a true quote unquote ace, right? So I wouldn't predict a Blake Snell signing or one of these top free agents. I see the White Sox trying to find projects for Brian Bannister, and maybe it's 20 projects, right? Because what he said, again, there's value in being a 3-WAR player. So there is a clear, hey, maybe we have a 7 to 9 WAR peak in Dylan Cease.
Change his name.
But everyone else, it's just about making positive contributions and how to make the most out of the ingredients that you have. So again, I think that the best strategy for the White Sox is, again, just trying to find all those pieces to the puzzle, and we can already tell that Aaron Bummer is going to be a piece of that puzzle, and I think there's a lot of positives with Aaron Bummer. And sorry, I'm getting off track a little bit, but like I don't think the strategy when it's going to come to acquiring pitchers is going to be, oh, we need a starter, we need a horse, we need a guy that's going to give us 170 to 190 innings. It's about getting positive contributions. Hey, can we get a guy that's going to give us 3 WAR, right? Let's get 12 guys who are going to give us positive contributions rather than X amount of innings or, be a postseason starter. Like, let's get to the postseason and then we'll figure out all our pitching, because you could be the Brewers and right before the series starts, hey, your game 2 starters out and, now all of it rides on game 1. So I feel like I'm getting away from the point a little bit, but again, I think Brian Bannister, it's all about unlocking some of those people that you're not thinking about, because Blake Snell is so attractive. Hey, he's probably going to be a 2-time Cy Young winner, but let's try to find the guys that we could turn into Cy Young winners.
If the White Sox are doing what you espouse them to do and what they want them to do is just getting good pieces that they elevate via coaching, that's why the Adam Duvall / Hunter Renfroe / older outfielder rental player irritates me, because you're getting the value and you don't have to pay the players who are pitching as much as you would at the top of the market. And so while you're doing that, you don't have a hitting coach that's doing the same thing as Bannister, or at least not espousing to that, where he's improving players who are just failing right now in the major leagues. And most of the White Sox hitters failed this past season. So instead of that, and then also the injury factor into the players, go and get a big bat. Go and get a real bat that's going to help you out to supplement the great pitching that they're supposed to have or supposed to develop. If you're not spending at the top of the market there, you got to spend somewhere close to the top of the market with an offensive player that's going to help you out. There's not a lot. There's probably very little, but you have to not just like, hey, okay, we're just not going to spend money on the pitching market, and we're not going to go for the big free agents, but, we're just going to downshift to Adam Duvall, which would be great. It would be a huge upgrade for the White Sox, because the right field position has been crap. And trust me, I would be great with Adam Duvall if that was like a February signing. We need to just fill out this team. He's our right fielder. He'll compete with Oscar Colas type of thing. But if in the beginning of the season or beginning of the offseason we got some available people and you downshift to Adam Duvall in November or December, I'll be probably pissed. That's why I'll be pissed, unless they're going to get a top 9 starter on the rotation. Then I'm like, okay, I get where you're at, but right now they don't have really any money spent on a lot of players except for Yohan and Benintendi.
I feel like we're answering like 3 or 4 different questions here. All 3 of us are answering 3 different questions, yes. Right? So, Sean, you're saying when you hear the question, what should their top priority be? You're saying, what should they spend the most money on this offseason, right?
I guess,
because
yeah.
Everything you said there was 100% correct. And that's still, and in my mind, that doesn't change the top priority being starting pitching, right? They can still go out and sign 20 low-level guys, but that's what they have to do. That's the number one thing on their to-do list, because while every position player, Herb, might end in a question mark, you can't have question mark without having actual words to make the sentence first. And the starting rotation doesn't have that. That's the question I'm answering. You are answering a question, what should their top priority be? The best player they could possibly get. That's what you're saying. And so that doesn't answer the question of position necessarily, because I don't think you care what position it is. You just want to see somebody come in here with a top-of-the-league track record, and that's it. So that's 3 different questions that we're answering. I don't know if any of them are necessarily wrong. I don't think any of us gave wrong answers to any of the questions, but it is funny that we all 3 showed that we interpret that question a different way, which, in turn, shows how many needs this White Sox team probably has.
Well, that's the thing, is like there's like 12 to 15 needs for the actual major league roster, and I guess when I'm looking at the question, and the reason why I'm trying to say like this is where you should spend your money or focus on, filling this need first, it's less about, setting the market or anything. It's just like right field's always been an issue. Yes. I think Adam Duvall will fix right field. That's my personal opinion, right? Mm-hmm. If they have a different opinion, I'm just saying fix right field, fix second base, whatever, but be aggressive to do that. Make sure you get in the player that you want to fill out that spot. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm taking Sox Mom's question a little bit too literally. I'm trying to think as Chris Getz, and what we've seen from the Giants is they were willing to pay for Carlos Correa at some point. Mm-hmm. Obviously, medicals turned up, but they were willing to pay for hitting.
Arson Judge, too.
Arson Judge too. Great call. The only pitching that they've paid for was a year of Carlos Rodon on a rental, basically, and it was only $22 million. That's basically a little bit more than a qualifying offer, right? I mean, the qualifying offer is around 18, so $4 more million than a qualifying offer. It's basically the buyout that Clevenger got. So I don't see the White Sox being aggressive in going out and getting a starting pitcher, because I don't think the budget's going to be more than the past year. I think it's going to be under $180 million. So if you have so many guys to fill out, right, it's just a math equation at this point. Like, I just don't think they can spend that much on pitching, and it doesn't seem like a philosophy of Bannister, especially in what he just said. He's looking for guys that, you know, are 29 and 35 that know their body, that have just kind of fallen away from their success, and getting them back to that point, understanding what makes them successful and trying to give them that direction. And I think, again, that's just cheaper than Adam Duvall. Hey, that guy's going to wake up, roll out of bed, and hit you 25 homers.
And I think that strategy from Bannister and therefore the White Sox, right, is a terrific strategy to try and fill out a starting rotation, because you go out and get a bunch of those guys. We talked about it last offseason. Some of that will work. He will be able to work that magic on a number of those guys. A number of them he won't. And that's just how baseball works out. But throw as much at the wall as you possibly can and try to cobble together the best rotation, more than 5 guys, I might say.
Yes.
You know, that's what you need to do if you're going to win and compete and go far, that you possibly can. And I think they're going to do that. But in the spirit of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, why can't they do both? Why couldn't they say, and especially this team, considering the number of holes that they do have to fill on that pitching staff, maybe they say, we're going to go out and sign 10 low-level guys, or whatever, or 3 mid-level and 7 low-level guys, and also maybe we will make a little run at Aaron Nola or Blake Snell. And I'm not saying that that's realistic. I'm saying that strategy is the one that any team, any front office should have. The White Sox now have a guy that gives them the ability to confidently do one half of that equation, right? And at the same time, you should go ahead and say, we're going to try to bring in anybody that we can. Maybe Brian Bannister, who knows pitching, is not like, I only like guys who are 29 to 35 years old who I can get to do what they did before. He probably looks at Blake Snell and goes, yeah, he's a good pitcher.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
course.
And so whether it's Blake Snell, the 2-time Cy Young winner, or not, going higher up that list, not limiting themselves to anything is probably the best strategy. And so when it comes to acquiring starting pitching, I think any fan should want them to explore every avenue that they can. And now they can have a little bit of confidence, or at least a reason to be hopeful, right, in that they have this guy as part of the front office who opens up several more avenues that could lead to success.
But like Blake Snell, Aaron Nola, they're going to cost around 25 to 33 million a year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like I just don't see the White Sox spending that type of money.
You don't see it, sure. But you can't say there's a 0% chance that it happens, or that Chris Getz wants it to happen.
I feel as confident as Andrew Benintendi hitting less than 10 homers in 20.
Well, that's fine. You can make the bet, but it's not 0%. Is the point I'm saying, that you've got a new guy in there, right? Yeah, he worked for this team for the last 7 years, but there's a new guy in the decision-making chair. Maybe a guy who is more willing to stake his, I don't want to say reputation, but, roll the dice on trying to convince Jerry Reinsdorf to pay for this guy. Here's why I'm very passionate about it. And at the end of the day, you just got to offer the guy more money than any other team. You know what I mean? Jerry Reinsdorf was willing to pay Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, right. The report was that it was more money.
And they did offer more than any other team. But I guess my point just being that when you talk about the other half of this, the Bannister part of this, right? Oh man, they could now that they've got this guy, they can go out and get these types of pitchers, and maybe it works out for them. That's good. That's another whole avenue that it opens up to that they might not have had before. There's other avenues too, and one of them involves spending a crap ton of money on one guy. I don't see it happening, but you can't sit here and say, well, we know they're not going to ever do this. So I think the idea is, and particularly for this year's White Sox team, because of the way that rotation currently looks, You have to try every possible way to bring pitchers into that group.
Real quick, just because Weasel says Snell fills a quality left-hander role in their rotation. This club needs him. I'm not saying that. Like, if Blake Snell's on the team, woohoo! I'm just trying to do the math problem. Like, if their budget's 180, he costs 33 a year. That you're spending 60% of your budget on a guy. It just doesn't make mathematical sense or sense from a budget standpoint. Rick Hahn wasn't able to convince him. Kenny Williams wasn't able to convince him. Like,
but this guy is different. He knows baseball.
If this team's going to spend, right under the point you get taxed for it, the luxury tax. Like, if they're going to spend up to that type of money, then sure, go sign Blake Snell. But they're just not.
It should, because was it like 220 this year? It was going to be going
right.
up. You know what all this sounds like to me? Even though he's younger than 29, Alek Manoah. It sounds like they're going to be trading for Alek Manoah to get him back to his form of a Cy Young top 3 finisher 2 years ago. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like Hyun-Jin Ryu, who had a good renaissance back in L.A. and was not really good with the Toronto Blue Jays. So would I be fine with those? Not really. I mean, Manoah more than Ryu, but because you have to trade something to get Manoah, because he's still part of the Tampa Bay or Toronto Blue Jays organization. But if he can get those guys and get them back to any type of semblance of where they were in their primes, cool, smooth. I think Manoah's like 27 now, so he falls out of the number he's talking about, the 29 to 35. But I'm sure he would love to get that guy in and mold him to the pitcher he was 2 years ago.
But also, Herb, you're talking about former Cy Young candidates, right? And this description that we're hearing from Brian Bannister might be a little bit lower down on the food chain than that, right? And so
Can't go too much lower.
Your Alex Woods, your Sean Manayas, your DeScalfani's, your Ross
that kind of guy, those kind of guys. And hey, he's been able to have success with those guys, and that's fine. But that to me, right, is what jumps out when you're trying to fill multiple spots in a rotation, and you're trying to say, all right, who can we get at low cost and bring in here at low risk and maybe work the magic to turn them into? If you're signing, again, those guys have had recent problems, so it's not super specific to those two Blue Jays pitchers that you mentioned. But if you're signing Blake Snell or Aaron Nola, you're saying, all right, go.
Baby.
We don't need to teach you anything. Go.
Baby.
And
yes.
that's not the description that he is applying to these players.
What's going to happen when DeScalfani comes and him and Vaughn meet in the clubhouse? You going to have some words? Do you remember?
No.
They had like a certain beef, like
Beginning of the year.
at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Like Vaughn hit like a ball either in the air or something and said something, was pissed at himself, and DeScalfani was like, what the hell? And yelling at Andrew Vaughn. I'm like, Andrew Vaughn? That man doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
How are you mad at him?
Thankfully, I blocked that from my memory.
Yeah. They're going to be teammates next year. That makes so much sense.
And again, like, I guess to just kind of illuminate the point more, like, it could be great for them to have a Blake Snell or a Horse or to fill out the rotation. But again, I don't even think this is going to be a rotation. I think it's going to be our pitchers, right?
You're talking about a radical reimagining.
Yes, it's about getting outs, right? It's less about a rotation and setting it up for the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, right? It's just about getting outs, pure and simple, and however we can get 27 outs on a certain day. And again, if you look at the Giants and their starters, Logan Webb made 33 starts, Alex Cobb made 28, DeScalfani made 18, Ryan Walker, who only pitched 60 innings, made 13 starts and was basically an opener, all right?
But
Alex Wood was 12 starts.
Is this by design, or is this the reason the Giants didn't make the playoffs and their manager got fired?
But, I mean, yes, but, I mean, I think those guys were worse. Their hitters were also horrendous. I mean, did you see their lineup? I mean, that's the thing, though.
You're talking about that like it might be some sort of secret strategy, and I'm wondering, like, if you have 5 guys that can make 30 starts, is that the way they're going to go?
They would go that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, if that was their thought process, though, I think that they would be paying for starting pitching, right? Like, they sprinkled on Rodon because they thought they can get a Cy Young performance from a lefty who would benefit from being in that park, and, there's the risk of, injury. Like, the White Sox didn't even want Rodon, right? So we're taking a gamble on this guy, and that's why he's $22 million when he's probably going to give us a performance that's around $33 million, right? Again, it's just about the idea of maximizing your budget. At least that's what I'm thinking the Giants were trying to do. And again, that led them to 107 wins in 2022 or 2021. their hitters and their lineup was just atrocious, though. Like, they didn't have anyone powerful. Like, Brandon Belt was their best hitter, I think, in 2022, and he's gone. And, like, Brandon Belt's not putting the...
He wasn't even that good, that 22.
Right, and he's, like, what, the Blue Jays' 5th or 6th best hitter?
That's saying something. That team's not a good hitting team, even though they have names.
But even then, you look at the Sox, top 5 starts, Cease 33, Kopech 27, Clevenger 24, Lance Lynn 21, Giolito 21. And the reason those guys stopped making starts was because they were traded.
Correct.
Right? Like, the White Sox were vastly different from the Giants. The White Sox used openers when they needed to. So, like, you're going to see more openers.
They were technically openers.
Yeah.
I remember one time they actually did the thing where they started a guy who threw an inning and then somebody came in and threw 6, like once or twice maybe that happened. Like, that wasn't really a strategy that they were doing. They were just like, all right, well
we have to pitch Kopech.
Jesse Schultens is going to pitch today, but maybe we'll put Tanner Banks out there first.
Yeah. So I think, again, it's just about, you need 700 or whatever innings from a pitching staff, and that's what the White Sox are going to be trying to do is putting that puzzle piece together. The final point, and then we'll take a break here. If they feel like I kind of lost it. Anyways. I just think that what Bannister is going to focus on is kind of what the Twins focused on, was just getting strikeouts this year, and a guy who's going to help with that is Michael Kopech.